The room was silent. Not the kind of silence that felt peaceful, but the kind that pressed against your chest, making it hard to breathe. A courtroom in New York City, filled with people who had already made up their minds. At the center of it all, sat a man who once controlled entire industries. Now, he couldn't even control his own fate. His name was Alaric Duval. A billionaire. A legend. A ghost of power, reduced to a defendant. The metallic sound of chains echoed as he slowly stood up. Not because he wanted to. Because he was told to. The judge didn't look at him with curiosity. Only with finality. "Mr. Duval," the judge said, voice steady, detached. "You are being charged with financial conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and multiple counts of fraud amounting to over $2 billion. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. $2 billion. The kind of number that didn't just destroy a man. It erased him. But Alaric didn't react. Didn't flinch. Didn't speak. Because he already knew something no one else in that room knew. This wasn't just a trial. It was a setup. And the people behind it were sitting right there in the courtroom. Watching. Waiting. Smiling. Then. The doors opened. Slowly. Every head turned. Two figures stepped inside. Not reporters. Not spectators. Not politicians. Something about them shifted the air. A young man, tall, composed, eyes sharp like he had spent his entire life learning how to see what others missed. Beside him, a young woman, calm but intense, holding a folder so tightly it looked like she was gripping the truth itself. They walked with purpose. Not hesitation. Not fear. Purpose. And when their eyes met Alaric's, for the first time, the billionaire looked human. A crack. A flicker. Something dangerously close to hope. The young man spoke. Clear. Unshaken. "We're here for the defense." The entire courtroom froze. Because this case had no defense team. Alaric Duval had refused one. Weeks ago. Publicly. Mysteriously. People thought it was arrogance. Or guilt. Or surrender. But now. Everything just changed. The judge frowned. "And you are?" The young man didn't hesitate. His voice carried across the room like a verdict of its own. "People he saved. When nobody else would." Silence. Thick. Confused. Uncomfortable. The woman stepped forward, placing the file on the desk. "And now," she added quietly, "we're here to return the favor." Across the courtroom. A man in an expensive suit shifted in his seat. Subtle. But not invisible. His jaw tightened. His fingers tapped once, twice, then stopped. Because he recognized them. And if they were here, then something had gone very, very wrong. The judge leaned forward. "This court does not recognize last-minute theatrics. You will identify yourselves properly." The young man smiled slightly. Not arrogant. Not nervous. Certain. "If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of love that crosses every boundary, then pause for just a moment. Like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to this channel. My name is Cairo Vance." A pause. "And this is my sister, Zaria Vance." Another pause. Longer this time. Because the name didn't mean anything to the courtroom. But to one man sitting quietly in the back, it meant everything. Alaric closed his eyes briefly. And for a moment, he wasn't in a courtroom anymore. He was somewhere else. Years ago. In the rain. Standing over two children the world had already decided didn't matter. When he opened his eyes again, the trial had already begun. And for the first time, the outcome was no longer certain. The courtroom hadn't recovered. Not from the names. Not from the confidence. Not from the way two complete strangers had just walked into a billion-dollar case, like they belonged there. The judge's fingers tapped lightly against the desk. Once. Twice. Measured irritation. "This is highly irregular," she said. "Mr. Duval declined legal representation. This court will not entertain." "I didn't decline representation." Alaric's voice cut through the room. Low. Controlled. But heavy with something that made people shift in their seats. The judge paused. You stated, on record, that you would not be appointing counsel. Alaric's gaze didn't move from Cairo and Zaria. I said I wouldn't choose one. A ripple of confusion spread. The difference sounded small. But in that moment, it felt massive. Cairo stepped forward, calm but deliberate. He didn't choose one, he said. Because he already had one. A pause. He was waiting. The judge leaned back slightly, studying them now, not dismissing them anymore. Waiting, for two individuals who have no registered legal presence in this case, she asked. Zaria opened the file. Inside, documents. Sealed records. Photographs. And something else. Something older. Something that didn't belong in a financial crime case. You're right, Your Honor, she said softly. We weren't registered. She looked up. Because we were never meant to be found. That line didn't just land. It echoed. Across the courtroom. Across the people watching. Across the man in the expensive suit, whose expression had now shifted from mild annoyance, to something closer to concern. Enough, the prosecutor snapped, rising from his seat. This is a delay tactic. Emotional manipulation. We are here to try a man accused of. A man accused, Cairo interrupted smoothly, without a single piece of direct evidence placing him at the center of the alleged conspiracy. The prosecutor smiled. Sharp. Confident. We have financial trails, offshore accounts, internal testimonies. Fabricated, Zaria said. Flat. Immediate. No hesitation. Silence again. But this time. It wasn't confusion. It was tension. Because accusing the prosecution of fabrication in a federal courtroom? That wasn't bold. That was dangerous. The judge's tone hardened. You will choose your next words very carefully. Zaria didn't blink. We already have. She slid the first document across the desk. And so did they. The prosecutor didn't touch it. Didn't even look. Because something in his instincts told him. If he did, this wouldn't stay under control. Before we proceed, the judge said slowly, this court needs to understand one thing. Her eyes locked onto Cairo. Why would a man like Alaric Duval, who has access to the best legal minds in the country, place his fate in the hands of two unknowns? That was the question. The one everyone was thinking. The one that didn't make sense. The one that cracked the entire situation open. Cairo exhaled slowly. Not nervous. Not pressured. Measured. Then he spoke. Because 21 years ago, he made a decision that cost him everything. The room stilled. And we're the only reason it didn't cost him his life. Zaria stepped forward. Her voice softer now, but heavier. Everyone in this room sees a billionaire. She glanced around. But we've seen him with nothing. A pause. With no cameras. No reputation. No power. Another pause. Just a man, standing in the rain, deciding whether or not two abandoned kids were worth saving. The air shifted. Completely. Because now. This wasn't just a trial. It was a story. And people were already leaning in. The prosecutor scoffed. Your Honor, this is irrelevant. We are not here for some sentimental. You're right, Cairo cut in again. Not louder. But sharper. We're here because someone killed a man at one of Duval's facilities. A beat. And needed a scapegoat powerful enough to make the truth disappear. That landed differently. Because suddenly. This wasn't about fraud. This wasn't about money. This was something else. The judge's expression changed. Subtle. But real. Are you suggesting, she said slowly, that this case is not what it appears to be? Cairo didn't answer immediately. Instead. He turned. Just slightly. His eyes locking onto the man in the expensive suit sitting 3 rows back. The same man who had gone very still. And then Cairo said it. Clear. Precise. Calculated. We're not suggesting anything. A pause. We're proving it. Across the room. That man's fingers curled into a fist. Because now. He knew exactly who they were. And more importantly. He knew what they knew. Alaric watched all of this in silence. But inside. Something long buried was beginning to rise. Not fear. Not doubt. Something stronger. Something dangerous. Because 21 years ago. He didn't just save 2 children. He hid them. From something. From someone. And that someone. Was sitting in this courtroom. Rain didn't fall that night that IT attacked, the kind that blurred streetlights into streaks of gold and turned silence into something restless. The city never really slept, but that night it felt like it was hiding. Alaric Duval wasn't supposed to be there. Men like him didn't walk through backstreets, they didn't stop near broken buildings or dim convenience stores flickering on their last breath of electricity. But something made him stop. 2 figures, small, still, pressed against the cold brick wall. A boy and a girl. They weren't crying, that was the first thing he noticed. Children in pain usually cried. These 2 didn't, they just watched the world like it had already taught them not to expect anything from it. Alaric stepped closer. Where are your parents? No answer. The boy's eyes narrowed slightly, not in fear, but in calculation. The girl didn't move at all. Alaric exhaled slowly. That's when he noticed it, the car across the street, engine running, lights off, watching. His instincts didn't scream, they whispered, danger. He turned back to the children. You shouldn't be here. The boy finally spoke. We don't have anywhere else. 3 seconds. That's how long Alaric stood there. 3 seconds to decide whether he would walk away, or change the course of multiple lives forever. Behind him, the car door opened, soft, careful, too careful. Alaric didn't turn around. Get in the car, he said quietly to the kids. The boy hesitated. Now. Something in his voice removed doubt. They moved, fast. Alaric opened his car door just as footsteps approached behind him. Sir, a voice called out. Those kids don't belong to you. Alaric turned slowly. 2 men, clean suits, wrong place, wrong time, wrong energy. And they don't belong to you either, Alaric replied. A smile from one of them, thin, dangerous. You don't understand what you're getting involved in. Alaric didn't smile. I think I do. The rain got louder. Or maybe the moment did, because the next decision he made, was the one that started everything. Get in, he told the children again. This time, they didn't hesitate. The men stepped forward, and for the first time in years, Alaric Duval felt something he hadn't felt in a long time, not fear, war. He got into the car, and drove, without looking back. They never spoke about that night, not fully, not completely, but its presence lived in everything. The way the doors were always locked. The way Alaric installed security systems that even his own staff didn't fully understand. The way he never allowed the children out of his sight for too long. Cairo noticed first that he was older, more aware. You think they're still looking for us, he said one night. Alaric didn't answer immediately. Then, yes. No comfort. No lies, just truth. Zaria listened quietly from the doorway, and from that moment on, they understood something other children didn't. They weren't just being protected, they were being hidden. Years passed, but the world outside never really left them alone. Questions came, authorities came, people with polite smiles and quiet intentions. Alaric handled all of them, carefully, strategically, sometimes aggressively, because whatever those men wanted that night, they hadn't stopped wanting it. Success changes people, but power reveals them. Alaric's empire grew, bigger, stronger, untouchable. But something else grew too, attention, and attention attracts enemies. One meeting changed everything. A private boardroom, glass walls, city lights reflecting like silent witnesses. A man sat across from Alaric, polished, controlled, watching too closely. You've built something impressive, the man said. Alaric didn't respond. I'm here to offer partnership. Or? Alaric asked. The man smiled. Or we revisit unfinished business. Silence. Then, 21 years is a long time, the man continued, but some things don't fade. Alaric's jaw tightened, because now, He knew, they hadn't forgotten, they had been waiting, and now, they were coming back, for everything. The silence didn't last. It never does. In the weeks after that boardroom meeting, something changed, not publicly, not obviously, but in ways that mattered. Systems began failing, minor at first, then strategic, bank transfers delayed, data corrupted, internal leaks appearing where none should exist. Alaric knew what this meant: pressure, not chaos, pressure. Someone was tightening the net. Cairo noticed the shift before anyone else. "They're testing you," he said one evening. Alaric stood by the window, watching the city lights flicker below. "Good," Alaric replied. "Why?" Zarya asked. Alaric finally turned. "Because now I know they're close." Close to what? He didn't answer, because the truth was dangerous. It happened without warning. A delivery.no return address.no explanation. A single black envelope placed on Alaric's desk, inside, a file, old, worn, but intact. Cairo opened it and froze. "Dad." That word carried weight, more than usual. Alaric looked over. "What is it?" Cairo didn't answer immediately. He just turned the file so Alaric could see the name on the cover. A name that hadn't been spoken in years. A case, buried, not forgotten, buried, and now, unearthed. Alaric's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes did: recognition, danger, consequences. Zarya spoke quietly. "They found us first." Alaric shook his head slowly. "No." A pause. "They found me." The courtroom doors opened again, but this time, the energy had shifted. Reporters, lawyers, powerful figures watching closely, waiting, because something big was about to break, and everyone could feel it. The prosecutor stood, confident, ready, but something in his posture was off, slightly, uncertain. Cairo stepped forward, and for the first time, he wasn't just defending. He was attacking. "Let's talk about the timeline," he said. The prosecutor smirked. "Go ahead." Cairo nodded. 3 days before the incident at the facility, a pause, someone accessed restricted internal records. The room went quiet, and not just anyone. He looked up, right at the man in the expensive suit. "The person who accessed those files is sitting in this courtroom." The man shifted, barely, but enough. The room noticed. The judge leaned forward. "Do you have proof of this claim?" Zarya stepped forward, placing the document on the desk. "Yes, Your Honor." A pause, multiple logs, verified timestamps, internal signatures. The prosecutor frowned. "This is..." "Wait," the judge interrupted, her voice was sharper now. "Are you telling this court that someone deliberately manipulated evidence?" Silence, heavy, final. Cairo didn't hesitate. "Yes." The courtroom was no longer calm. It was fragile. Like glass. One wrong move, and everything would shatter. Cairo stood at the center, unmoving. The documents were already submitted. The logs. The timestamps. The signatures. All pointing to one truth: someone inside the system framed Alaric Duval. The prosecutor adjusted his tie. A defense mechanism. But his voice when he spoke. Not as steady. "This court cannot rely on unverified documents from unknown sources." "Unknown?" Zarya interrupted. She stepped forward slowly. "Let's talk about unknown." Silence. Because now. This wasn't a defense. This was exposure. Cairo turned slightly. "And let's talk about why this case exists at all." A pause. Because someone needed Alaric gone. Whispers spread. Uneasy. Uncomfortable. The man in the expensive suit didn't move. But his breathing had changed. Subtle. But noticeable. Cairo opened another file. This one, thicker. He placed it on the table. "This," he said, "is the real case." The judge frowned. "Explain." Cairo nodded. Over 20 years ago, a man disappeared after uncovering illegal financial movement involving multiple corporations. A pause. Those corporations still exist. The room shifted. Zarya continued. And that man's disappearance was buried. She looked directly at the court. But not forgotten. Alaric closed his eyes. Not in defeat. In confirmation. Because now. Everything was coming together. The truth spread fast. Too fast. Reporters outside the courthouse began shouting. Camera flashes. Chaos. Inside, the man in the suit stood abruptly. This is a disgrace, he snapped. But his voice cracked slightly. Zarya turned toward him. Quiet. Calm. You made one mistake, she said. His eyes narrowed. You underestimated the two kids he raised. A pause. And you underestimated what happens when they grow up. Silence. Heavy. Final. The judge raised her hand. Order. But order was already slipping. Because now, the truth was no longer hidden. It was unstoppable. The courtroom fell into silence. Deep. Unbreakable. The jury returned. Each step echoing like a countdown. The foreman stood. Everyone held their breath. On the charges of conspiracy, fraud, and obstruction, a pause. The longest pause of the entire trial. The kind that rewrites destinies. We find the defendant, another pause. Not guilty. The word landed like a shockwave. Not guilty. Not broken. Not erased. Free. The courtroom erupted. Alaric didn't move. Not immediately. Because for a moment. He couldn't believe it. Then, Zarya grabbed his hand. Cairo stepped in front of him. And just like that, the billionaire who once stood alone, was no longer alone. Outside the courthouse. The world had changed. The sky stretched wide. Open. Free. Alaric stood between Cairo and Zarya. Not as a billionaire. Not as a defendant. But as a father. Why? He asked quietly. Cairo smiled. Because you didn't leave us when it was hard. Zarya added softly, so we didn't leave you when it mattered most. Alaric nodded. Slowly. Because now he understood something deeply. Not power. Not wealth. But legacy. And love. That's what saved him. If you enjoy this video, please like, comment and subscribe to this channel for more interesting stories like this. Thanks for watching.